Welcome to the video for the weeks of August 3rd and 10th. Scheduling looks tight towards the end of this week, so I'm going to combine the 2 weeks into one video. I would recommend you watch this week's video, set it aside, and then pull it out for next week. That way you don't have quite as long with me at one sitting. We start the week of August 3rd with a steady state run with surges. And it is a steady state run that we've done countless times. Even those of you that are new, you've already done this probably a few times. The steady state run, we're looking at about 85% because for most of you, that's going to be at either aerobic or anaerobic threshold. So we want to be running as fast as you can, but it's sustainable and comfortably hard. We're not going into race mode at all. For most of you, you have 3 to 5 miles of that. What we're going to do to make this steady state run different is every quarter mile, we're going to do a 20-step surge. And when I say 20 steps, 30 steps, however I use that, I'm thinking in terms of counting one footfall. So just count right foot or left foot. It should equal out. It's much easier than counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's easier to count 1, 2, 3. So it's just a simpler way to do it. So a 20-step surge every quarter mile. That should be fast enough that if somebody's watching you run, they can definitely tell you change gears and you change speeds. For many of you, it might be 5K pace. For some of you, it will be faster than that, maybe down to mile race pace. The key is to go fast enough to disrupt your rhythm, to breathe harder, to get more muscular tension, but also be able to recover. I always like to think about this workout on the treadmill, because if we were on the treadmill, we could say, we're going at this speed, we're going to increase to this. Now we've done our 20 steps, we're going back to the normal speed. So there's no big let off. Outdoors, on the road or even the track, there's this tendency to really drop off pace after the surge. That's where you need to add some focus to this and some concentration to try to go back to the previous pace and not slow down significantly to recover. The point of this workout, and there's a couple of them, but the primary point is to be able to recover without slowing down significantly. If you slow down significantly after the surge, you will recover much faster. And if that's what we are interested in, and some of the things we're going to talk about over the next 2 weeks, that is the case. But in this, we want to recover at speed. So it will take a little bit longer to recover, but you can certainly do it if you go back down to threshold. And that's kind of the definition, is it's aerobic, or at least primarily aerobic, even if you're at the anaerobic threshold, so you can recover and sustain that pace. Every quarter mile will come up enough that it will seem somewhat frequent, especially after the first 1 or 2, but they're far enough apart. Think of that on the track. You're surging once a lap. That's not too much, especially for just 20 steps. So figure out what pace you can do or what pace change that you can do and still recover. The point of this, in addition to the one I just mentioned, is the reality of racing. When you run a race and you go through an aid station, something as simple as that, and you're trying to drink at race pace, that puts you into a little bit of debt. You can tell because you take that drink and you're breathing heavier than you were before that drink. And you're trying to catch up to the people you're running with, or maybe your pace group, or you hit a hill. And when you hit that hill, you're going to go into a little bit of debt. You might go slightly anaerobic, and you want to be able to recover without having to really slow down on race day. So this prepares you for those things that are going to happen, even if you're trying to run the perfect pace. Even if you have a pace group and they're just dialed in as smooth as a treadmill, you're going to have things that come up because of the course or aid stations or whatever may occur that are going to put you in a little bit of debt, and you need to be able to recover and catch back up and get back on that pace. The other is it's a great racing tool. We don't use a whole lot of this. Most people don't at certainly marathon, a little bit more at half marathon. But when you get to the shorter distances, 5K, 10K, and certainly any shorter than that, it's a necessary tool, because in marathon, there's a level of attrition that usually sorts out order of finish. The shorter you go, the more it's about, okay, can I put this person into enough difficulty that they're going to decide they don't want it as bad as I do, and they're going to fall off, and I'm going to be able to beat them. So if you are truly racing, you have to be able to surge and you have to be able to recover. So we're dealing with the realities of racing, but also a great racing tool. Moderate quality workout, 2 on, 1 off. And that is correct. Many of you have seen often 1 on, 1 to 2 off. So we're going to go 2 minutes at a higher intensity and recover in a minute. Now that higher intensity is also at threshold. So maybe you're slightly anaerobic towards the end of the 2 minutes, but this is not as 2 minutes as hard as you can go, because a minute is not enough to recover and maintain the pace. So 2 minutes high anaerobic, that is going to feel like a very strong, solid effort. And if somebody sees you while you're running that 2 minutes, you're going to look pretty good. And then you're going to get to that 1 minute, and that is slow-mo recovery jog. So slam on the brakes at the end of that 2 minutes, jog as slow as you can. We talked last week about the mental benefit of continuing to jog rather than walking. So I encourage you to jog. Jog that 1 minute, get as recovered as you can, which you should be able to get well recovered. If not, you're doing the 2 minutes too fast, and then you repeat. Now, in Training Peaks, I've given this in terms of miles. For example, 3 miles of 2 minutes on, 1 minute off. For most people, that's going to come out about where I want it to be. For some people, it might be a little bit too much. So let's max out at 3 of those reps. So 9 minutes equals a mile. So that might not be perfectly on sync with each of your miles, but that would be the max. So if you have 3, the max that we're going to do, 3 miles worth, the max we're going to do is 9 of those. So you have 18 minutes of faster threshold running. There are also some additional tips in Training Peaks, 4 additional tips, so I won't go through all of those, but check that out in your workout description for a little bit more on this workout. The long run next week is modified anaerobic threshold run, and that's 75 to 80%. Conveniently enough, that's what many people will average for a marathon. So in good weather and in good fitness, it will correlate relatively well to marathon pace. But if you check out the weather that we've had over the last several weekends, it depends which weekend you hit, whether that's going to be anywhere close to your marathon pace or not. So don't think too much about pace. Think about, here's my long run effort, which is typically up to 75%. We're going to take it up just a little bit to 75 to 80%. It's comfortable and sustainable, but it is a noticeable change in tension in your legs and in your breathing. Your breathing shouldn't be your limiting factor, shouldn't be all that hard. Your legs will be a little bit more uncomfortable than your lungs. But during a long run, when you feel a little bit of extra stress on your lungs, it's a little bit alarming, because normally that's not what we feel during a conversational long run. During this workout, your mind may be a little bit more stressed than your body, because I'm going to be doing this for a while. And anytime it seems like it's in an indefinite amount of time or a long enough amount of time, it becomes mentally stressful, even though in that moment, you're fine. And that is a big part of the mental side of marathoning and half marathoning as well. So that is still important. For the middle of the bell curve, the total mileage on the MAT run as part of your long run is about half of the mileage. There's some variation on that, but if you have a 12-mile long run, you probably have 6, maybe 8 miles of modified anaerobic threshold run. And if that's way too hard for that duration, you're probably overrunning it a little bit. So that's the week of August 3rd. Going into the week of August 10th, we start with a mixed workout. And even those of you that are new are figuring out pretty quickly that I like to mix things in a workout, in part because it breaks it down mentally, but also because we can build a synergistic effect. And that's what we're going to do with this one. After a good warm-up, we start with 4 times minute on, minute off. The minute on is fast. It's as fast as you're warmed up to go. Maybe not like you're running an all-out quarter, certainly not racing a quarter mile, but running those pretty hard. You're going to be anaerobic at the end of that. Then the minute is slow-mo recovery jog again. You might be going, let's say 6-minute pace. On the recovery jog, you might be going 10-minute pace or even slower. There's no bonus points for recovering at a faster pace in this situation. So 4 times minute on, minute off, that's 8 minutes. For many of you, that's going to be give or take a mile. And then we go into 4 to 8 times 20-40 hills, meaning you're going up a hill for 20 seconds and you're going relatively fast relative to the degree of incline. If it's a terribly steep hill, you might not be going all that fast, but you're working pretty hard. If you don't have a great hill close to where you need to do this workout on this day, you know those spots that you're definitely going faster one direction than the other. At least find one of those. It doesn't have to be all that steep if you're running 20 seconds fast to get that hill effect. So we're going 20 seconds fast, 40 second slow-mo recovery jog. And then we're going into, for most of you, a 2 to 3 mile steady state run. We're going back to that threshold that we talked about up here. And we're just trying to maintain as high as you can go and not accumulate lactic acid. So it is a good, strong effort. You're breathing. It's not normal breathing. If somebody's running next to you, they can tell that you're doing a workout. There's no hiding that because of the level of your breathing, but you're under control. You're not racing. And what we've done with the 4 times 1-1 and then also the 20-40s on the hills is we have started this steady state run from mile 1. The training effect you're getting is if all we were doing is steady state run, you're starting that effect at mile 2 or 3 or maybe 4, depending on how hard you've worked those. So what we're trying to do in a 2 to 3 mile steady state run, because of what we've done here, we're getting a much longer steady state run benefit. And with these, we're getting some neuromuscular conditioning. We're maintaining some of the faster running that maybe we've done over the summer, which will diminish as we get closer and closer to a half marathon or marathon, where that's not as big of a demand as some of the other things that we're going to train. And then the strength training benefit of just getting your quads, calves, hamstrings, everything a little bit stronger from running uphill, and we're getting that additional steady state run bonus. Moderate quality workout is a progression run. We use this often, especially on Thursdays for moderate quality, because they're very easy to adjust for how you're feeling. So in the warm up, you figure out, what do I have today? You might start to warm up and think, I got nothing. I gave too much on the high quality workout. But after a mile or 2 or 3 of warm up, you realize, okay, I'm coming back to life. I have a little something to give. And here's a good, honest effort to start this progression run. And I'm going to try to increase my heart rate at least, and maybe the pace. Sometimes the pace doesn't cooperate because of weather conditions or uphill, downhill, all those things that will affect pace. But you're going to be working harder throughout that. Now, what we're really after in this workout is to accumulate more time between 75 and 85%, that high anaerobic zone that I talk so much about. And the more of that we can accumulate at the top, that's even better. But we're doing it this way so we can figure out, what do you have for the day? We have a little bit of skill training in how do I manage effort? How can I start and make sure that I can finish strong? So we do want to progress through that. We do want to get faster. But more importantly than the progression is how much time do you spend in that 75 to 85% and how much towards the top. So if you show me this really cool graph on how much you increase pace, but you started so slow that maybe if you're doing 3 miles of that, we didn't get really any additional training benefit from that first mile other than a little bit longer warm up, that's not what we're after. Yes, those progression graphs are great to see, but we also want to accumulate that time. Long run is endurance long run. We've been through a few of these already, so there's nothing terribly creative in this one. It is, for most of you, probably increasing distance by a mile or 2. We're working on long run lab. How much sugar, salt, and water do I need to feel strong throughout the run and be able to finish without much of a drop off in pace? Again, weather may play a role in that. But I also want you to start thinking about your long runs in terms of segments. I would break it down to at least 3, no more than 5, but somewhere between 3 and 5 segments are good. I want to feel like this for the first few miles. I want to feel like this after I have those in the bank and I figure out what I have today. Here's how I want to feel towards the end of it. if you can start doing that, it's going to make race day easier because you're used to running to your plan. Probably the number one question I get, especially as we get to race day, is what pace do you think I can run? I don't know. How do your legs feel that day? What's the weather like? There's so many factors that go into that. And if you get too hung up on a pace, you're either going to sell yourself short because you didn't go with feeling great, or you went out too hard for the day and blew up and didn't run anywhere close to what you could have run if you would have adjusted. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about pace expectations, and then we're going to also talk about how should it feel. So if you expect the first 3 to 5 miles of a marathon to feel comfortable, maybe some mental stress because you have so long to go, but physically it should feel comfortable, and your goal pace is uncomfortable, you need to dial that back. That might just be you need a little bit more warm up that day. Your legs haven't come back to life yet after maybe a taper, and you're going to feel better throughout the race. But if you override that, you do that at your own peril, and usually it doesn't end up well. Also, if you check in with yourself and it's like, I am very relaxed, very comfortable, my adrenaline has faded, and I know I can go faster than what I thought. Okay, give yourself permission to gradually go a little bit faster. So we're going to start rehearsing that today. What we're doing in training, if you haven't figured this out as I've discussed these workouts, yes, we're training your body, but we're also training your mind and training your racing skills. And a lot of these workouts are addressing all of those. So there are your next 2 weeks. If you have questions, let me know.